Hello, partners. I'm Architect Patch, and you're watching Curve TV's Bouldtalks, your collaborative construction show, Season 2. How are you, partners? You're watching us via Facebook at Curve TV PH, on Kumu at TBC, and on YouTube at the Boulder channel. Here at Curve TV's Bold Talks, we bring you the different sides and faces of the industry like never before. Fresh, inspiring, unintimidating. Join us for an hour of talk and more. Let's get ahead of the curve. For an urban city to remain livable, it will need to be increasingly aware of the value of its natural green spaces. A healthy and sustainable built environment will therefore require close cooperation between various stakeholders, such as urban planners, architect, engineers, landscape architect, and also the community. So, for tonight's episode, let our focus be on sustainable landscape management. So joining our program are landscape architects Balbino Santos and Stephanie Legaspi, the operations head of Plon Tour. Good evening, guys.
Hi
Hi,
guys.
good evening.
Hi, how are you both doing?
We're good. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, same.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. And Steph, I love the polo, ha? Okay
Thank
na,
you.
ikaw na talagang landscape.
We're on team right now.
You really are a landscape architect. I can see the plant design on the polo. Okay, so let's start the conversation going, right. I'm very excited for this because we're putting the spotlight on the landscape architects, which will be, also educating everyone on what you guys really do, right? And the importance of having a landscape architect on board in our projects. Okay, so since you both are members of what we call PALA, or the Philippines Association of Landscape Architects, can you tell us, Balbi, how did PALA manage to stay relevant amid the pandemic?
Oh yeah, it was difficult because usually our industry, the professionals in our industry tend to need to go to the site to see for themselves, right? How things go. But ever since the pandemic, that part of the job has been difficult. Fortunately, and it was really difficult when to collaborate and parang to and all that. So fortunately, Pala was able to hold a lot of webinars, a lot of design challenges in the past year to help keep us sharp and even help us no business namin. Like for example, they Pala had this initiative where we all sent our RT, landscape RT or non-industry related businesses and parang yung mga ads, and then they display in the in the Pala page. That way,
Oh, wow.
tulungan. Yeah. So,
Really, ah?
yeah. So, even if about the firm or yung graphic design or signage, post design, or kahit nga bakery. Yeah,
I'm sure. I was gonna ask, ilang ube cheese pandesal lang lumabas dyan sa support na yan. I'm sure
yeah.
madami.
Oh no, I actually bake ube Jason.
See, there you go. I mean, that's one of. I mean, I think that's the ultimate lockdown baking the pastry na natikman natin, right? And
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
very good gesture of pala.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Can you tell us more? Mhm. Go ahead,
besides
Steph.
that, a lot of the members of Pala, like landscape architectural firms, bigla nagka-influx of ideas on
Mhm.
how do we imagine, post-COVID landscapes. So,
Mm-hmm.
parang each firm or even like individual practitioners just started posting their content all over social media. Like, oh, this is how our parks should be. This is how our streetscapes should be. So, parang na-open up yung discussion, no? On how,
Mhm.
to apply landscape architecture everywhere in our daily lives.
And it's good that you brought that up because the main issue now in the pandemic is you don't want to be indoors, right? If you want to go outside, you want to be with fresh air, outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you guys enter, eh. 'Di ba? The landscape architecture usually happens outdoors. And for some people, they would think that plants lang ang ginagawa nyo, but it's more to that. So before I, segue to my next question, which is a good thing that you brought that up, Steph, can you just give us like a brief, quick background on what landscape architects do talaga?
Steph, you first.
All right. I just want to start it off with like it's evolving every day. Like in terms of what services could landscape architects do, of course we have the standard services that we do: outdoor recreational areas, commercial areas, landscape areas. But right now, since technology is like ever changing and changing the way that we live, there's so much more to that, and there's so much more collaboration going on. Not just it encompasses our field or our industry, landscape architecture, and it's sort of like becomes an ecosystem of creative designers. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, we have the opportunity to become leaders on creating developments, creating systems, because everything is connected, everything is an ecosystem. Even if we're not in the woods or whatever, we're in the city, but it's still an ecosystem of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Bal, do you want
Basically,
to add to
yeah.
that?
Basically, it's like landscape architecture is well positioned to be like, to be like the nexus, the intersection between different professions, and
Mhm.
yeah, and it is in there that we can create a new dish out of the ingredients, and from that dish create something that's more than the individual ingredients. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that because I mean, if you look at the development, right? You have the building, you have the structure, and
Mm-hmm.
you find people. You find that there are people who would say na parang ganda naman the entranceway. Parang why is the circulation so well planned out, or why is there like a nice esplanade or frontage? And what they don't know is that's where landscape architects enter also, right? The scope,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just about softscapes, it's also the hardscapes. Think
Mm-hmm.
about the pavements, the pavers, the ground. I mean, these are all part of your scope. And
Exactly.
that's why we want to put it is a vital component in any development, which I think some people, don't really put, they're not so critical about it. Diba? So sige, let's talk about this. In your profession, can you guys share some critical landscape issues and challenges that you face in the industry? Let's start with Steph.
I guess, well, there's so many. There's so many issues, but the most prominent one is that people don't see the value of nature, open spaces, and, basically greens. And we'll only be able to really address that, through our education system. You imagine like kids talking about sustainability, talking about nature casually, and Because right now it's like most of the sustainable discussions are on the professional level. So it's like you have to graduate college just to have a glimpse of what's really going on. So people really don't know the value of the benefits of having open spaces and green spaces, and I think it's a challenge for us actually. Like, how do we let them know of that value without being such a hard sell, without it being such a hard sell, diba? So yeah.
What about you, Balbi? Any difficulties? Like, if I give you a plan, say, or a concept or a project, what's the most difficult part of it being a landscape architect?
Well, obviously, the fact that you most of the time you can't go to the site, it's hard to visualize, it's hard to internalize, because there are some pieces of information, some things that you can't see in a plan, in a CAD drawing. Something that just have to be there, diba? And yeah, that's the difficulty right now in our profession in these times. Of course, we
But
still can. And
how do you pivot with that? Because, like, for example, I mean, there are still projects that are ongoing, right? Even if we're on lockdown, and say you really can't go to the site, how do you adjust to that?
Well, technology. Technology
Okay.
is quite amazing these days. You can click on Google Maps and go there and boom, diba?
Right. Balbi, what if that site wala pang Google Map Street View or
That is
malabo yung
that makes it
ano?
more difficult. Yeah, but there it makes us think creatively. Like this restriction. Like maybe you haven't been there, but you know someone who has been there. You can ask them. Ganun. And then parang
Right.
ka na on their experiences during that time. Diba? And
Yeah.
parang these things make me realize na why don't we employ these techniques before? Na yung mga yung kausap mo talaga, like instead of going to the site, be there for 1 hour, 1 hour, kasi ka na, kaysa asking the person who is there, living 24/7 there, and malalaman mo bigla na, uy, may bago na papasok lang sa oras na to, gano'n. Diba? So,
Steffi
parang,
mentioned,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm good. I'm done.
Steffi mentioned earlier about the awareness to it, right? And you don't want to be like a hard sell with this profession. So in your way, how do you spread the awareness of the importance nga of this part of the system? Steph, how do you do it?
Usually when we encounter like different types of clients, maybe a homeowner, developer, or like just basically a company, it's super important to add to the story that we tell on how much value landscape adds to what they're trying to do. How will it benefit them? Because the story isn't about us, it's actually about them. We're just guides basically on how can we reach sustainability. And in this industry, sustainability, you can't throw it around, especially in terms of social media right now. There's so many people who will police you on, oh, that's not sustainable, that step is not sustainable. But in terms of sustainability, I don't think it's a present thing. It's meant to be something aspirational. So the more you get the word out there, the more you create awareness, and the more people that are going to be on board and try to reach it instead of policing like every single step. And I admit I was like one of those people, because in Plontour, the team, we have constant conversations on sustainability. I'm just like, man, we can't label ourselves as sustainable designers, because we never really, there's so much left to tackle. There's so many factors to sustainability. So and I love to read more about something that I don't know, and I just realized that I didn't know much about it. And I like to watch videos and read books about it, and I stumbled upon Bill Gates, and he was talking about the pandemic not being the biggest issue. He wasn't trying to downplay it, but he was saying there's a bigger issue at hand, and that's the Earth is dying. We're
It
not
is,
living. Yeah, we're not
it's
living.
a serious it's a serious problem that we're facing right now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll read more about it and change my mindset about it. And, it's something aspirational, something we should strive for with everything that we do, even if it isn't in the construction industry, right?
True.
But how did you guys get into landscape architecture? What influenced you to get in this business, right? Was there someone, did you, how does someone say, okay, I want to be a landscape architect when I grow up? Balbi?
Yeah. Okay. Full disclosure, the reason why I got into the program in the first place is because I wanted to get into architecture because I
Okay.
I was good at drawing as a kid, good
Mm-hmm.
at drawing, and my mom was like, "Oh, let's put architecture, but quota course." So landscape architecture lang. But the more I studied landscape architecture, the more I fell in love with the profession, and it wasn't, and the more I aged, the more I realized what part of landscape architecture I wanted. So it wasn't a one time, big time at this moment I want to be a landscape architect. It's more like adding bit by bit until suddenly I have this monument showing that I really want this.
Right. So you
Yes.
learned to love the course, right? What about you, Steph?
Mm-hmm.
Did you really want to become a landscape architect when you were young?
I think I share the same story with Baldy. I wanted to be an architect just because, my dad was an engineer. We might
Okay.
have been like a good tandem. So that's what I was thinking. Um, Honestly, I wasn't pretty good at school. Shout out to my professors. um, yeah. The same happened to me. The love wasn't instant. It actually gradually accumulated once I started working and,
Mm-hmm.
having conversations with people and having a mentor. So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a lot of different things that made me love it. And I think I'm here, like, for good. This is what I
Yeah,
want to
it's
do.
important to also have a
Yeah.
mentor kasi talaga along the, during the process and the journey. And you both are UP graduates, right? And you
Yes.
guys, can you tell everyone that, what program, they only offer that, right? UP only offers landscape architecture in the NCR. Am I correct?
In NCR, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But are there other schools that offer landscape architecture also outside NCR?
Yeah. So we have Bulacan State University
Mm-hmm.
and we have San Agustin.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have San Carlos and Cebu. So that's around 4 universities that offer
Mm-hmm.
landscape architecture. But
Mm-hmm.
San Carlos and San Agustin are really new to it compared to UP. So I
Yeah,
guess
so you
it's
can
gonna
see.
be a boom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Balbi. You wanna add something to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And if I correct me if I'm wrong, Steph, there's UST that's offering one subject, one course na
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
parang ano what is it called? Elective. Yeah, like an elective na landscape
Yeah,
architect.
parang it's part of the curriculum, right? But for those who are wondering, like, who really offers the course, it really is just UP for the NCR area,
Yeah.
right?
Right now.
So
Right now.
yon, right now. So I guess, for those who are interested to take it, just like these two people, I mean, they really didn't dream of doing it, but now they're practicing it and they're
Yeah.
loving it. So when we
I'd like
return,
to add.
okay. Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Go ahead, Balbi. Sige,
I'd like to
before I
add
go
that
to my commercial.
yung experience namin ni Steph na gradually fell in love is quite evident, quite the same with many of the
Mhm.
professionals. Only because we didn't even know before na there's such thing as a landscape architecture degree.
Right.
And
Yes.
ngayon na mas slowly naging mas mainstream, I think there will be people who right off the bat would like to say, I want to be a landscape architect.
Right, exactly. Again, it's spreading the awareness to this profession, right? Okay, so when we return, guys, we will talk more about the different issues and approaches regarding sustainable landscapes. So don't go away. Curve TV Bull Talk Season 2 will be right back. Bull Talk Season 2, we are talking sustainable buildings and landscapes with our friends from the Philippine Association of Landscape Architects, also known as PALA. Okay, so we're here with Steph and Balbi. But first, before I ask you the questions, I'd like to thank my EBT group. They're watching you guys now on Facebook. I'd like to say hi to Jax, to Reggie, to Mark, and Gerald. So they're tuned in. Very excited to hear your thoughts on the topic. All right, so let's continue with our conversation. So where do you think we are with regard to landscape technology? Like, how do we fare in comparison to our Asian neighbors?
So I think we have a long way to go.
Okay,
Understatement.
you're honest.
But it doesn't mean that there aren't groups or companies right now that have sustainable products or promote sustainable practices. But if you compare us to, let's say, Singapore or Thailand, Singapore actually already has a goal to be sustainable, completely sustainable by 2030. Or like they have their whole sustainability development goals, in line with the United Nations. And if you can see Thailand, their landscape design is ever evolving. Like, I really admire them. I love the Thai landscape architects. Here, I think there's already a market. So a lot of companies are coming in, like, just to mention one, let's say Green Ants for sustainable bricks. A lot more are coming in from other countries to tap into the Philippine market. All they need is people who are actually going to engage with them and see the value. Again, that term value, surfaces. So people really need to feel like they need it, and it will greatly benefit them.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, Balbi, you want to add to that?
Yeah, cause I've been when I was still an undergrad, my professors used to say that we were quite behind by 15 years. Of course, that was
Okay.
then, but siguro right now we're more advanced because right now we have
Mga ano na
lots
lang,
of
mga
green
10 na lang.
technologies. Yeah, maybe I don't know, but we're catching up. That's the good thing. Because
Okay.
there are more people na mas aware sa mga technologies tas na import nila. Like I know a few landscape architects na nag-work abroad tas bumalik dito and then introduce what they learned there from there. So yeah, I think the more we get to engage with the world, the more we'll learn. The more our local scene will evolve.
Okay, and your with the projects that you're working on right now, can you share some innovations that you do in terms of designing? Like because we know that what we usually do kasi is when we do developments, right? You have a certain area, you just put there for landscape, and then a landscape architect will utilize that area and come up with the design. So you guys can add the deck, add the paved area, and then the scapes. Can you give us some innovations on the designs that you are working on right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Steph, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. What do you call this? Every time we try to design homes or even commercial areas, we always push for sustainable materials. Even if the clients actually don't ask for it,
What
we
are the
kind of
sustainable materials, Steph? I don't want to put you on the
So-
spot, but what are the sustainable materials?
I'm on the spot.
But you are on the spot. You are the spotlight.
Yeah.
Okay.
So eco bricks,
Mhm.
just because we actually need a lot of hardscape materials. It's very, very in contrast with landscape architecture because we talk about plants, but again, we handle a lot of things that are more than plants. So for eco bricks, and then
What's the difference between a normal brick from an eco brick? What makes it so eco friendly?
Okay. So for you to be able to create a brick, there are a lot of materials that you need to outsource and a lot of carbon footprint in delivering those materials. Creating those materials actually are deteriorating our environment right now. When you talk about an eco brick, it's basically recycled material. And when they actually tested it, it's, if not the same strength as a normal brick, it's stronger and it lasts longer as well. So that there's some sort of sustainable practice that's happening just with that material. And if you use a lot of those bricks, right, you've recycled how much trash already. And I think that says a lot about what we're striving for or what we're hoping for or to reach, which is sustainability.
Other innovations, guys.
Yeah. I'd like to add with what Steph said. Like what she was referring to is like yung parang embodied na environmental impacts eh. Like it's sort of in the same vein as blood in your hands, but in this case, environmental degradation in your hands. So parang it's not just it's not the brick, the present. It's how it was made, where it came from, and how you're gonna throw it out in the future, because eventually it's gonna deteriorate. Yeah,
Right. And so that's one thing, right? The material for sustainable materials. But in terms of planning, compare it to how landscape architects used to plan 20, 30 years ago compared to now. Is there a difference? Like, are there adjustments? How do you keep up with the environment is ever changing. It's changing right before our eyes, like super fast. In terms of your adjustment to planning when it comes to landscape, how do you guys do it now? Is it different from before?
Right now, Steph?
So actually, we had a feature on Manila Bulletin talking about post-COVID landscape. So it's very relevant right now. And the team, discussed it, talked about it. How do we actually design for the future? Because we're talking about future, we always have to innovate. And we had four pillars that we want to consider in designing. So that's people-centric planning, that's integrating nature, art as catalyst of change, and data and technology as the backbone of future cities. So when you talk about people-centric planning, when you plan something, it's not just about, profit or commerce. The people have to come first. So that's one. The next is integrating nature in everything that we do. It's how do we put like snippets of nature all around us? Because right now, ever since the pandemic, it sort of like sparked our need for that connection, right? And like the malls are closed. Where do we go? We're just in our homes, right? So like that's where the boom of plants happened. Plantitos, plantitas. Everyone started to buy plants, and my tita suddenly knows what a selum is or like what a tabaco is. Before it was just like that plant over there that looks,
Right,
a little
right.
bit flat. But right now they actually
The
have
tree,
leaves.
ganon. Right.
But now it's, the fiddle leaf tree. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's actually a start to integrate nature in
Mm-hmm.
everything that we do. The next is art as catalyst for change. So this is where we work with graphic designers, right? Because art has the chance to, has the effect to uplift people and actually change behavior. So like when you see like really pretty graffiti in BGC, you're like, oh, this is me, this is my culture, this is my place. You feel like you belong, and it makes you feel something. So that's art. And then lastly, data and technology. So how do we integrate it to making our city smarter? Can we have our wallets on our phones? Can we just tap it on the bus, right? Can we, you know, now it's COVID, can we have
Mm-hmm.
those QR codes to get into malls? And that's just one of the applications of technology that we're using in our everyday lives.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we should actually um, design our future cities with those in mind. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we just keep doing, or designing the way we did back then there's no change. So
Yeah,
we
we're just
have to
gonna go
keep
back to what
adapting.
we were before. We'll just go
Yeah,
back to who we
exactly.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add, we
Exactly.
don't those things we don't think of them separately. We think of them integratively right now. Because, for example, environment. If you design a landscape for green city, ganon. Pero if it affects the people who are already there, then what's the use?
Right.
So, you have to consider how they affect each other. These sectors these sectors in landscape design.
Exactly. And now that we are in this lockdown, right? A lot of adjustments are being done in terms of design. For example, if we design now, I mean, clients are more pushing to going, I mean, putting importance in their open spaces. Unlike before, diba? The more
Mhm.
indoor, the more sellable areas, right? So um, so now we are entertained like having big windows for the circulation of the wind. Um, from your perspective, right? How did you adjust to it? Like you said, you're not going back to how it was before. So
Mhm.
what about for landscape? How is it more different now?
Mhm.
I think for landscape architecture right now, um, people actually have that awareness for open spaces and greens in their homes. Like they want to integrate it. And one of the challenges that we'll have right now is how do we make it accessible to everyone?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, above social class, above, whatever. How do we give you that commodity? Because that's what it is. People think of
Mhm.
commodities as water, electricity, but they never think of nature. And I think that's one thing to put it is to change that mindset. And um, I think for us, we're sort of like ambassadors of nature. Like we always
Mhm.
have to like spread the word about it through our clients and to whoever we discuss it with.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's it. I think for you to show us like the solutions on how you guys are going to address this with your projects and with your upcoming projects. At this point, I'm gonna give you this time to present your landscape projects, right? Which you consider innovative and sustainable. And I'm so excited to see this.
Mhm.
Kasi syempre, I'm very used to seeing like, diba, mga structure, built structure or, the construction. I like to see landscape projects. It's very refreshing to the eyes, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's the main
Yeah.
focus. So let's start first with Architect Baldi. Sige, Baldi, you'll
Sure.
start this and then afterwards, let's go to Steph.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Sige. Page.
Okay, we're showing the PowerPoint now. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Wait, I have to open it in my phone so that I have a guide.
Okay.
Give me a sec. Okay.
Sure. If you're going to watch it on Facebook, there would be like a sort of like a delay from now,
Yeah.
but go ahead. We're seeing your first slide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm landscape architect Balbi Santos, and yeah, here's one mantra I follow. It's that landscape architects design ecosystems, and that's because I believe that landscape architects are well positioned to orchestrate how nature and society interact. Because at the end of it all, we can't separate these two. They're two realms that are always linked, no matter what. Especially now, we find trash in the bottom of the ocean, sa Benham Rice, and yeah. So next, yeah. And actually, let me just open it in my file so that I can speak more dire-derecho.
Yeah. We're showing the Campo mobile landscape system.
Ayan. Okay, so this one is a design that it came up for competition by Pala. This was at the onset of the of the pandemic, and people the pressing issue then was, how do people get access to food? How do they get around? How all these problems. So I realized that there's a way to hit two birds with one stone using this thing that so okay so I designed this like it's like an ecosystem on wheels, a kind of uh yeah, ecosystem on wheels, like parang catchy. Pero really, what I try to do here is every part of this design is like magkaano, like they interact with each other. The using the bike will power up the motor, the electric motor, which will help power up the electric stove para pangluto. Saan galing yung pagkain? They're gonna get from the edible garden na kasya sa isang square meter lang na area. And you notice that I went vertical para ma-maximize yung space. So what happens with the wastewater? It goes into a water tank for where they can reuse it or filter it for other uses. And you can compost the yard waste, yung mga excess leaves, mga ganun, and reuse, ilalagay siya sa compost bin. And then pwedeng gamitin sa landscape. And to add like this so that you can have trees going around mobile mode. You can use it a stationary cart open mode, or you can just put it away when things are a bit better or you right next. All right. So next, we have the Orchidarium. This is if a colleague commissioned me to do this for a site he had, and basically, they wanted a way to showcase the orchids, pero not just in a parang fixed setting, mas parang open forest type. So I designed this to be as experiential as possible, and the existing trees I use them as the parang uh, as the structure where we can put the orchids. And of course, we also provided. I also thought of adding man-made structures like orchids para mas makita at eye level. And here we got the project, a green wall for residential area. And actually, this is my first project on private green wall. It was my first project ever as a landscape architect, and here was I learned especially about ecology. And the mistake of plants and then calling it a day. I forgot to consider then when you water the plants, where will it go? What may catch trees?
Mm.
or kung saan, like our house na namin para yung slugs na sa yun area na may slugs na nakatira to begin with. So this suddenly na-realize ko with this na it's not in case the wall. You have to think about the broad perspective. You have to think of everything that's outside the area of your site, even the region. Ganun. And you think of what happens with the stuff that you put in, the stuff that comes out. So this actually kind of spearhead tip of my way of thinking right now with regards to landscape design. And then here, I haven't shown this in public yet, but maybe soon. I actually did a application where the client, quote unquote, the client is an animal, not a human. So I feel, yeah. So I
The
call this Dugong
dugongs.
Ako Highway. Yeah, kasi the problem with the main issue with dugongs, you can't, their habitats, which are seagrass beds, they're so fragmented. Like, yeah, they have to swim several kilometers away just to get to the next one. Kasi nga nasisira ng humans, plus human activity like dumping of trash. So naisip ko, why not create a shortcut? So these floating platforms which seem unfeasible and looking back it does kind of, pero the concept is there na like na parang kasi the less time they spend swimming, the more time they spend eating and reproducing and making the population boom again.
Right.
So you see it na ano na my proposed route, which is quite massive. Again, this is just conceptual, but yeah, I figured it is a realm that landscape architecture can get into because it's not just land. There's also the sea, which covers 75% of the world. So I think landscape architect should think more about water as well as terrestrial stuff. And lastly, the project. These things that I think of ecological design, I write about them a lot here in my blog. Here, it's called Decosis. You can check them out here at decos.home.blog. Yeah, I write there, and I get these past months, but I'm getting in the groove again. So, stay
Good. Thank you very much, Baldi.
All right. I'm very, very excited, first and foremost, because the team worked so hard in these projects that I'm going to showcase to you guys right now. All right. So let's go first with our advocacy, which is Greener Manila. And when we talk about Greener Manila, it's basically, trying to redesign spaces which we feel like really, really needs landscape architectural interventions or just basic design interventions. You can see in the perspective, the four pillars of post-COVID landscapes can be well reflected into this design. And and if you can see, so we have people-centric planning. We integrate nature and art and then technology as well. So we're showing you a couple of the perspectives of this one. And then for good. For good is actually an initiative from one of the team members during, the height of the pandemic. We were all like, what can we do to help? Because a lot of architectural firms are actually solutions, so showing architectural solutions to how they can help with the situation. So in our little way, we all came up with Gardens for Good. So basically, Gardens for Good is an initiative in which we design your residential garden, and it has a pay what you want scheme, and all the proceeds go to our chosen charities. So if you can see from the sketches that the team made, all of these are very, very, very. We started this initiative need greens, open area, and a connection with nature. So for this perspective, you can see that we created a garden for a cat owner, and she had like 9 cats, and she also loved to do gardening and planting vegetables. So we wanted to integrate that into their design. The next one would be like basically trying to have a welcoming area for when they get into their house. And then the last one is, an extension of their architecture. So they want to actually use nature and their garden as an extended living area. So with that, um, we actually found that we can actually work around our services online. And that's when we had Gardens Plus online. Basically, Gardens for Good was a case study, or like we got a lot of data and feedback from whoever participated in our initiative, and we tried to roll out Gardens Plus online. So in Gardens Plus online, we do everything online. So starting from when you give your um, data to us, your site photos, lot plan, everything is done online, just for your safety, our safety as well. And most of the coordination actually really happens through email or through wire, and it works because we always consider the story of whoever we're designing for. And when they tell us that story, we already have a preconception of how they want to go about with the design of their garden. There. Okay. So I think that's it. And there you go.
Of Plontour. And thank you also, Balbi, for sharing your conceptual drawings also and some of the projects. It's so nice to see these. Again, like I said, when a landscape architect presents the project, really soft and refreshing to the eyes, right? Because you really value the connection between the environment and the users talaga, right? So that's really one of the most important factors that you guys do. All right, so with that, let's take a short break. And when we return, we will be discussing more about landscape architecture. We'll be right back, guys. Season 2, supported by Workfolk Collaborative Workspaces and Hospitality Innovators Incorporation. So for sponsorship and collaborations, if you want to feature your brands, your projects, or your company, please drop us an email at onetbcchannel@gmail.com. Follow our socials at CurveTVPH and at TBC Plus, the Boulder channel. All right, so still with us, our landscape architects, Balbi and Steph. Okay, so after you presented your projects, you've seen some innovations from that, yung cambio. That was very interesting, Balbi. And, how, Steph, you guys really incorporate, the entrance going to your house. And, it's ano pa lang eh, it's already doing some psychological fixing to a person, right? When you approach your doorway, diba? No matter how stressful your day is, but if you have the proper planning, ano na eh, it creates a big impact already. So, you both are very young, right? Very young, a lot of fresh ideas. How do you see the future of the landscape industry after COVID? Let's say tapos na to next year. How do you see is the future of your profession?
Well, one thing's for sure will be more forward thinking than before. Like it's not kasi maybe there won't be another pandemic in 100 years because the last pandemic was 1918, 100 years ago. But it's not just pandemics, it's every kind of disaster, of disturbance, earthquakes, floods, and with the onset of climate change, yung mga strong weather events, strong storms. So suddenly we have to, landscape architects have to think of contingencies or parang ways to make the landscape still function the way they want it, despite these setbacks. So if that's one thing that this pandemic may have taught all of us as professionals. How about this,
What
Steph?
about you, Steph?
I think to add to that, forward thinking comes with leadership, and the role that landscape architects will play in the next few years will be leaders, really, in terms of the development. And that means that we're not just the afterthought, like the house is already built and that's when we come in. I see it really as, before they start on the house, we're there. Before they start on the subdivision, we're there. Before they start on creating, a township, we're there. So we actually also connect, different kinds of professions together. And again, it's not about us, it's about people. So if that's the role that we have to take in the next few years, we should own it and actually really try to promote it a lot more and not just be fixated on landscape design as being the end all, right? That's not the end goal here. The end goal here is, to reach sustainability, to help people live longer, for nature to live longer, and have our kids enjoy the same things we have now, which is like beaches, forests, mountains. Those are connections that we constantly need to have. And if in the future we won't have them, it will really have serious effects on all of us.
And I want to tap into that. You mentioned something about how you guys are parang afterthoughts, diba? The structure is there already, and then okay, all of a sudden we need a landscape architect pala.
Nice.
So what is the? There's a difference. There's a huge difference there if you are already on board prior to the construction, during planning stage, versus when they ask you to enter when everything is built already. What is the disadvantage or the advantage of those two scenarios from your perspective?
So usually for us, we really want to be there in the initial planning stages because we think about the entire flow of the development, not just, the architectural structure or, snippets of it, but everything as a whole. So we also take into consideration the user experience. And one example that I could give is we were brought in during, the final stages of the contract documents for architecture. And we saw like, oh no, they blocked off an opportunity for this area to like transition outdoors. And that's just one example. And there's so many other examples that we can contribute ideas to, like really, really fresh ideas that you can incorporate to your design.
Right. So I get that. Siguro those walls, no, during planning stage, because the landscape architect wasn't present from our perspective. tingin namin, okay, that deck, that outer deck will be sufficient already, let's say for the amenity deck of a condominium, right? Usually ganyan eh.
Exactly.
Right, right. So the pool is here. Okay, let's put the pool here, the gym here, and then okay, we have enough space for the outdoor. Okay na yung pang landscape na yan. And I think I get what you're saying is because from your eyes, you see how everything will flow from the garden naman. I mean, from the outdoor space going inside. Yun nga, so that's where the afterthought comes na parang, sige, let's put all the indoor areas and then, okay, may mga natira pang 40 square meters. Sige, ibigay na natin yan sa landscape. Parang ganon.
Yeah.
So, there is so I do get what you're saying, and that has happened to us also.
Oh no.
We apologize for that. But yeah, so I mean, this has been very informative. Again, like I said, we barely put the spotlight on landscape architects, and some people they thought that for you to be able to take landscape architecture, you need to take up architecture first. But that's not it. Like, you can directly take up landscape architecture without taking BS architecture. It's not a prereq, right? So they just UP is there to give them the curriculum, and then we also have the masteral degrees after that, to continue and enhance the learning experience, and also branch out to urban design, right? And I think all these things are interconnected. So, I mean, before we close this conversation, what can we expect from you or your respective firms, like for example, Plantura, in terms of the landscape experience, operations, and service moving forward? Let's start with Valdi.
Right. So So the more I become an experienced professional in this field, the more I'm able to see what how I can integrate different facets of the profession with other parts of other professions. Like, for example, dati parang hindi ko napapansin yung mga utilities, but now it's like it's the first thing that comes into my mind. All I can say is mas ma-expect nyo na mas holistic yung mga design ko and sa mga landscape design ko. It's going to be more less on the details, more big picture. And I think that's what a lot of people are lacking. Not people, a lot of designers, especially the less experienced ones, are looking na think more holistic.
Totally agree with Balbi. That's actually also the direction that we're going. A holistic, service for everyone. So everything has to be connected, basically. Architecture, interior design, landscape architecture.
Exactly.
And some other fields that don't get enough spotlight, graphic design, advertising.
Yes.
They're so crucial in giving, getting our word out there. Copywriters, they write so well, and because as designers, sometimes we know how the place feels, we know the behavior or the impact it has on people, but we just don't know how to articulate it. If we have those other professionals on board, it'll be a lot easier for the majority of our audience to understand what we're actually trying to say. And that's collaboration. So moving forward, I think you'll see a lot more collaboration with everybody, like especially architects and landscape architects. It's starting right now, but it's going, to bigger places. Very excited about it.
Yeah, there will be
I'm
less
very
pilots and
excited
more
too, and I
collaboration.
agree. Right. Because like before the show, right, I told you that there is a need for that, and it is a specialization. Landscape architecture, ano yan, pinag-aaralan talaga yan. And it's not just, okay, there's a free space, let's just put benches, put some plant boxes, okay na yan. Right? There's more to it. And you guys are there to really think about it, conceptualize, see the flow, how it affects, the wind, even the orientation you also consider, and how it will affect the end users. So,
Mhm.
I mean, again, thank you very much for sharing. It's always, always so nice to hear fresh ideas from, our young professionals. And, before we close the show, we want to acknowledge those people who are watching via Facebook as well. Um, Philip Samosa said, "Nice one, Steph." We also have LJ Rappy here, Tom Thompson, Mabel Tran, Go Balbi from Alfonso Ancheta. We have
I know.
Pedro Nascimento. Your friends are here, Mitzi Aquino, Alan Tienda,
Mm.
Kathy Nadal, Rhea Gonzalez. Thank you guys for watching. I mean, and for supporting these two landscape architects. Again, partners, allow me to repeat this. A healthy and sustainable built environment require close cooperation between various stakeholders, such as urban planners, architect, landscape architects, engineers, and also the community. So thank you very much for doing this. Our friends from PALA, the Philippine Association of Landscape Architects, we have Valby Santos and Steph Legaspi. Thank you again for sharing your ideas with us. So tomorrow parts, Thursday at the Boulder channel, please watch iConnect at 4 p.m. and Bliss Out and About at 6 p.m. So, partners, join me again next Wednesday for another exciting episode of Curve TV's Bold Talks live at 6 p.m. back to back with GR Detox at 4 p. Sorry, this is Grid Talks at 4 p.m. And again, tomorrow pala, tomorrow we are celebrating Earth Day, right? Am I correct? Thursday, April 22
Yes.
is Earth Day. So, tamang-tama
Mm.
sa ating mga landscape architects yan. So, again, stay safe, everyone. Get an architect, get an engineer, get a contractor, get ahead of the curve. I'm Architect Patch, and you've just watched Curve TV's Bold Talk Season 2, your collaborative construction show. Bye, guys!
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.